Welcome to episode 3 of Scenario 95. We have 4 predictions for you and it's a longer episode, so I hope you enjoy it. Okay, Daniel, we're back again. This is another episode. It's been a little while since we've had one of these, so what have you been thinking about for the past little while?
Well, obviously, I've continued thinking about the predictions. It was quite funny because this week when I was researching them, so one of the predictions this week is on reality TV. And I don't know if you've ever tried to research something like reality TV, but it is just impossible to get any half reasonable news source. So all I could find was listicles. So I was just drowning in listicles. And it was like 5 years ago I came across my first one. And, it's a listicle, right? You don't... at the time, I didn't love it. There wasn't much information, but I think I'm coming around to them now. How do you find? It's just so pleasant, isn't it? You get so many pictures, you get so many headlines. It's just everything's just like some, serotonin. Give me more.
Yeah, there's no content,
just serotonin.
Yeah, it's just serotonin without the content. It's beautiful. I've never really read listicles. I think I've been like you. I've just avoided them like the plague because it's not useful at all.
Well, clearly you've never been looking for trashy reality TV controversies then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, that's a good point because one of my predictions this week is a little bit down that same vein where I was almost getting into some listicle shit as well.
Oh, God. Man, what's this show moved to? It's week 3 and we're already diving into the listicles.
Yeah, exactly. What's your source? BuzzFeed.
Man, you're lucky it was even that. I was getting into some Aussie reality TV and I got Punky, which is like the budget version of BuzzFeed, which is only around in Australia. It's not good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But
well, that's good. Glad to hear that our research is top notch.
If it's on at least 3 of these listicles, it has to be something, right?
Yeah, it has to be true.
But anyway, what have you been thinking about?
Yeah, but I've been thinking a little bit down the same vein when it comes to these predictions about how quickly these probabilities can change. So again, with some of the predictions we've already made in the past episodes and with some of the predictions we've been sort of talking about behind the scenes, all of a sudden now, just a few weeks later, the probabilities that we would assign to some of these predictions has just increased or decreased wildly. So I'll give you one example. I think at one point we speculated a little bit about whether China would develop a vaccine for coronavirus. Yeah. And we both said that was incredibly low and a low probability and that it was always going to be the UK or the United States. And all of a sudden now we're hearing a lot about a China vaccine. This is quite new to me and all of a sudden, right, our probabilities would, if we had to update it, and we assumed it was 5% before, it would be maybe 20 now, 25% chance if it's one of the major vaccines being tested.
I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm still extremely skeptical, right? It was 3 months ago Russia claimed that they had a vaccine as well, and it's we heard about it 3 months ago and not at all since. And it's aren't there I think there's several vaccines in the US which are in the running at the moment. So it almost seems to me there's a good chance that there'll just be 3 or 4 that come out at a similar enough time.
And I think the other thing that's a little bit interesting is I sort of had an idea when we were making this show that the probabilities would stay relatively fixed and then there would be some event and we would then realise whether it happened, whether it was 5% or not, just based on if we make a lot of predictions, then 5% of them should roughly be accurate, right, or true. Now, the issue is, and I think the reason why I've thought a lot like that is because of the election, where in the election you say something like, oh, this candidate has a 5% chance of winning, and then the election happens, and then there's an outcome, right? And it's very sort of it happens on one day. The probabilities can be relatively fixed leading into the election, right? And then there's a day of outcome. Whereas here, with what we're doing, there's a lead up which alludes to the result. So over time, your probability doesn't just stay at like a 5% chance of winning the election. It's constantly changing that percentage over time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. Actually, wait. There's two things I want to add to that. One is that I'm super mad about my prediction in the first week about Tesla being a 5% chance of it being the only company to have full self-driving in every well-maintained metropolitan area by 2023, I think is what I said. Because, a week after I made that prediction, it was announced that a full self-driving beta was being rolled out to basically to a select number of customers, I think. So it seems like that day is effectively here right now if they were to just decide to roll out the software. So something that seemed like a 5% is now actually closer to like 50%. Obviously, depending on how quickly they roll it out and barring no major mess ups. But yeah, it was a bit rough.
And actually, I think it makes us sound incompetent, doesn't it, that we got that wrong?
Well, yeah. I think most people will be most people will be listening to this, having already seen that news, think like that's a bit of a dumb thing to say.
Shall we move on to the first prediction?
Sounds good. So, my first prediction is a season from the Bachelor franchise gets cancelled by 2025 due to extreme controversy.
Wow. Okay. This is interesting.
Yeah, it's juicy, I think. I really enjoy thinking about this. Like, what could it be?
So, I guess to start off, do you just want to maybe explain what The Bachelor is and the show?
Yeah. So, I guess to expand a little bit on it, so the Bachelor franchise includes, like, all the different types of The Bachelor. So, obviously, the show The Bachelor, in all of the different countries it's in, The Bachelorette, they've done a spin-off Bachelor in Paradise, The Bachelor Winter Games, and then there's also just like several other ones. And for those who have been living under a rock and don't know what The Bachelor is, it's just a reality TV show where one person goes on and then they try and find love with 22 other contestants at exactly the same time. So it's just quite a strange show, but it's been long running and just quite successful.
I'm offended by that because I barely know what it is.
Wait, you've never watched an episode of The Bachelor?
No, I've never.
Mate, all I can say is that means you've been single too long.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess the reason why this is unlikely is a season of The Bachelor has never been cancelled due to extreme controversy. There was a season in Australia which was almost cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak. And then there was also, funnily enough, a season of The Bachelorette in the US was meant to be starting basically when the outbreak started. And now it's just been postponed for so long that the suspicion is that season's just going to get cancelled. But I would argue coronavirus is not an extreme controversy. So I would say that doesn't count. So basically, in like the many years it's been running, it's never been cancelled.
Yeah, so Daniel, what would be some extreme controversies?
Yeah, the first one being race controversy. So shows have gotten cancelled from this. Most notably, there was this one called on the Food Network, and it was a chef named Paula Deen, and she had this show which I think was quite long running, and she said the N-word on air at one point, and it got cancelled immediately following that. But yeah, to counteract this, The Bachelor is like, they've been criticised for race a fair few times because it seems like in a lot of these dating reality TV shows, they will get like one African American on there and then they almost make a really big deal out of it. I'm also just going to call out the American Bachelor on this, like especially the American Bachelor. It's like they've almost got stereotypes every season, so there'll be like one person significantly older than them, and they're like, oh my god, is that an issue for you? Someone significantly younger and then someone of like a different race, and it's always like a big thing when it just shouldn't be. But yeah, they're trying to like get more woke after being called out on it for so many times. So the latest Bachelor in America is going to be African American, which is a first. They did have an African American Bachelorette at one point, though. Yeah, the next one is sexual harassment, which, if you just have to look at the comedy scene to see how many things get cancelled by this. So it was about 2 years ago. I swear it was almost every well-known comedian had some like pretty major sexual harassment allegation, and they just like went dark for a few months or a few years. And yeah, many shows have been cancelled from this. Like
Okay, so how would that? But yeah, but how would that one affect The Bachelor, right? So, because I imagine, and this is going to be where I come in, and I'm a little bit sort of negative about this idea, is that I imagine the reason why The Bachelor is a success is because the candidates are vetted to the extreme, right? So it's incredibly competitive to get on The Bachelor. There's a lot of people applying to be either the Bachelor or Bachelorette, and or like the other 20. Candidates, right, that they have to select from. And because it is so competitive and there are so many applicants, then the producers can be incredibly selective. And then when they're really selective, they can actually get rid of a lot of these problems. So like the sexual harassment thing, I think they can be really selective and make sure that there's a low probability of that happening based on the candidates.
Yes, I guess in regards to the race thing, what they have seemed to continuously do is just get a lot of like token people of a certain race, and like it just hasn't been well received. Like I think if they did just want to turn around 1 year and they did just get some woke producers, it would actually just be fine. Like there is no reason it shouldn't be fine. I think in regards to the sexual harassment thing and the cast that they get, making sure like actually vetting them properly, I feel like there are so many things that could go wrong there. So I guess like first things first, we could mention times where you would imagine people not having had a bad past and all of a sudden it does get brought up.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then, okay, so I guess you mentioned that some of the extreme controversies could surround race, and they could also be like sexual harassment claims. Are there any other?
Yeah, so I guess thorny past, so that would probably mainly sort of fall into the other categories. But yeah, the other one is like the mental health of the contestants. So I feel like mental health is just like a general topic has been brought into light a lot more in like fairly recent times, like the last 10 or 20 years, right? And I think with these reality TV shows in particular, it seems like every now and again people do go too far, and it does become pretty clear that it is pretty exploitative. Exploitative? But yeah, I would struggle to find that much like solid evidence on this, but there is this one Australian TV show called Married at First Sight, which is quite literally exactly as it sounds. So they basically just get two people who they think will be a good match, and it's like clearly they just pick two people who are going to make interesting TV because they're going to like have some sort of conflict. And yeah, then they marry them off, and yeah, there were a few reports and like private interviews that came out after that show aired that said like some pretty horrific things, and it was like quite clear that a few of the contestants like genuinely got a bit depressed after the show. And yeah, similar things have happened on The Bachelor after one guy was portrayed. Maybe, well, he argued during editing, but like realistically, he was just extremely clingy. But yeah, he was just portrayed to just be the most clingy, like strange bloke ever. And it's like quite clearly impacted his personal life. And now he's trying to sue the channel that produces The Bachelor. So, yeah.
Wow. Like even among hosts and things, I remember some hosts had a really bad time being the host of one of these shows as well.
Well,
the mental health.
One of the really interesting things about the mental health example is the host of the Australian Bachelor has actually got a best-selling biography, and it's like he hasn't done anything other than host a bunch of like I would just say B-grade reality TV shows in Australia. And his is all about like battling with mental health, basically. But yeah, I think there's also the interesting thought experiment of like in 50 years, will we still have reality TV, or will that be considered like unethical, right? Like surely that will fall somewhere after like cruelty to animals and like meat, right?
I don't think it's that extreme at all. I think reality TV has a very clear payoff to people that do it. So I think typically everyone manages to promote their Instagram, they get paid, they do become like a little bit of a minor celebrity which I think a lot of people want nowadays. So it is a sort of conscious choice that people make because they sort of assess the potential rewards against the potential costs, and that they're willing to do it.
I think you might be overestimating the average contestant if you think they're considering the like risk versus reward and like the potential cost and benefit and everything, right? Maybe actually no, maybe that's not fair.
I actually don't think so. I think I think it is really calculating. At least from the reality shows that are here in Denmark, it seems like there is a very clear sort of like, I'm going to get on here because I want to be like famous. I want to promote my Instagram and then like be like a sort of influencer online. That is like part of it. And obviously then you can sometimes speculate that they're actually gaming the system and causing more controversy than they actually sort of maybe initially intended. And the reason why they're causing that that additional controversy is so they can blow up, right, and get even more successful and get more influencers. You know, it's just like that whole thing of like all fame is good to some extent for them.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a thing. Plus, just to add an additional thing, reality TV is sort of interesting because it's a little bit of like a science experiment.
Yeah.
Which I think is why it's going to like persist, right? It's that whole thing of like, let's put a bunch of, this is like what would be the science laboratory experiment, right? It's like, let's put a bunch of rats in a cage and give them a task and see what happens. But it's a little bit similar, right? It's this whole like, let's put all these people in a room and like, let's give them this objective. Let's get them really drunk and let's see what happens, right?
I think if you extend it out like infinitely, well, not infinitely, but like 100 years or so, like I think I'd be surprised if we still had it. But like I see your point.
Surely there are more offensive TV shows which should be cancelled before The Bachelor, right?
I'm going to be honest, I had so much fun researching this. No, seriously, the stuff which I have seen, I could not comprehend beforehand. Yeah, I'm actually just going to read out several of these because I think they're hilarious.
Okay, awesome.
One of my favourites is there's this show called Bridalplasty. I think it was cancelled in about 2006, which is very good news. So it was a show about soon-to-be brides, right, who fully understood that they actually weren't going to look beautiful on their wedding day unless they got a ton of plastic surgery. So it was basically a bunch of challenges, and you know, if you win a challenge, you get plastic surgery. And part of me just loves the notion of winning a challenge for like a boob job. And like, maybe you don't want a boob job. Maybe you just don't like your nose and you don't like your chin or something. And all of a sudden you win a boob job. You're like, well, like, I don't want the boob. Like, do you take the boob job? What do you do?
Yeah, it sounds really horrible and demeaning, to be honest. That whole show.
Yeah. Another one which is horrifically bad. No way any of these could be made today. It was called There's Something About Miriam, and it's a competition show where men battled to date the attractive Miriam. Miriam was a trans woman, and once the men found out, they were so outraged they sued the production company. Like,
yeah, like that's insane, right? That's so deceitful by the production house.
Other ones was Boy Meets Boy. It was a same-sex dating show, similar to The Bachelor, but the twist revealed at the end was that half the contestants were just pretending to be gay, and they got a reward for like partnering up with a gay person and like making the gay person fall in love with them.
Oh my gosh. Wait, was that part of the show, or was it just a lot of contestants entered and were just like, oh, I can just pretend?
No, that was part of the show. Like, that was the whole gimmick. That was the twist at the end.
I wonder how they got to that. It must have been they tried to recruit like a lot of maybe gay guys, but couldn't find enough, and consequently they just put some filler guys in there.
Back in the early 2000s, I feel like a lot of these things were like seen as like quite jokey, whereas these days it's just like not acceptable at all, right? Like, because jokes about trans women and gay people is just like not okay at all anymore, but like I guess it was seen as somewhat more okay like back in the early 2000s. Well, yeah, if these were around today, I'm pretty certain they would get cancelled, which is good. But yeah, I've got one more for you. and this one's got a good title. Megan Wants a Millionaire. Which followed Megan, a former contestant on another reality TV show, on her quest to become a millionaire's trophy wife. And here's the best part of it, right? It didn't finish the season, and it's not because it had bad ratings or because people thought it was untasteful. It's because they found out one of the contestants was a murderer.
That's great.
So that's what I mean by thought it passed. You don't know which contestant's going to be a murderer.
Is that reason to cancel a TV show? I actually think that's like the worst out of all of them. I think that's like, they've served their time.
Right, so they should continue. Well, I guess depends on the situation, right? Like, are they a suspected murderer? And I guess if they've already served their time, then they already would be pretty old, I guess. But I guess it could be a thing where if they were suspected and then more evidence came up when they were on the show and then it turned out they did it, then it would be pretty bad. But
yeah, I guess it's all about the reveal, because the other ones are like exploitative and are like sort of not socially.
Are you saying Megan Wants a Millionaire is not exploitive?
I'm just saying that I think of the examples you've given, I think Megan Wants a Millionaire shouldn't have been cancelled, but all the other ones above it should have been cancelled.
Is bring back Megan Wants a Millionaire with no murderers, and we wanted to find love.
Isn't that surely that's part of the risk? If you're trying to fish like Megan is for a millionaire, maybe someone who is lying about their millionaire status is actually a murderer. It's actually so real life. That's so reality TV.
Yeah, that's true. It is more reality than like Boy Meets Boy, I guess. I'll give it to you. Yeah. So now you've heard my pitch. Well, where do you put it? Is it 5%?
I think there's a likelihood from what you've sort of told me that like a lot of these reality TV shows will get cancelled, but I don't think The Bachelor will get cancelled. And I think there's these sort of extreme controversies that you mentioned in the past, they're all sort of true and they could affect The Bachelor, but I just think that it's become such a streamlined and processed and formulaic production now that the ability for one of these controversies to really hit The Bachelor, I think, would be sort of remarkable. I think they're just going to be so careful about it because The Bachelor is, I think, even though I don't watch it, I do think it is a little bit of like a reality TV institution now. Yeah. I think a lot of people follow it and it is very big.
It definitely is a juggernaut.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the low side on the 5%.
Okay, so now that you've heard mine, Ian, hit me with your first one.
Okay, so mine is out there. Again, I've opened up the fridge of the future.
Oh, God. I really thought this was being left in last episode, but, you just... No, I'm fine. This is okay. I can live with it.
Yeah. And I've had a good look. I've peered into the future there, and here is my prediction: the government of a country will announce or endorse like a national dish that country has that has been updated with artificial meat.
I like this. Okay, tell me more.
To put a little bit of a timeline on this, I'm going to say it's going to happen by 2025. Artificial meat is obviously something that we're starting to hear a lot about in the news, and I guess the first proof of concept of artificial meat, I researched and found out it was actually a beef patty that was created at Maastricht University about 10 years ago. And what's happened since then is now there are lots of companies that are working on creating artificial meat and trying to bring down the costs of the product. So to give you some example, I looked online to try and find the cost of artificial meat at the moment, and I got some hilariously vague costs.
Okay.
So, here's one. One company is charging €50 per nugget of meat. Like, what is a nugget?
Like chicken nugget?
Yeah, presumably they mean chicken nugget, but I just got nugget. So, yeah, make of that what you will. And then another company cited that the current cost was a small car per
My
kilo.
God, I can understand now. Finally, it's put in a unit I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought about you obviously straight away to calm there, Dan.
Jeez. Well, that's so
yeah.
absurd. What the hell was this source? Like, who thinks that's a reasonable way to put things?
I think it's because they're working on bringing these costs just down right now, so can sort of be a little bit vague with how much it's costing now, because they all set then targets about how much they want the meat to cost in the future. So, yeah, there's about 60 sort of startup companies working on artificial meats. Most of those companies are based in the US, Europe, and in Israel as well. If Israel counts as Europe, I'm not really sure. A lot of these companies have like different focuses. Primarily, most of them are focusing on artificial beef. Right, and I think that sort of makes sense from an environmental standpoint as well. There's a lot about beef being the most greenhouse gas emitting meat, so sort of making an artificial version of that would be really great. And then you have some funnier companies that are specializing on sort of other meats. For instance, there's a Belgium non-profit which is looking at artificially making foie gras. A Spanish company is just focusing on producing fat, right? The ambiguous fat. Of course, you also have other companies that are just working on, like, I think, improving the sort of the general process.
So just to clarify, when you say artificial meat, that's like cell-based meat, not like plant-based meat, where it's like plants cooked in such a way that it's almost exactly the same as meat. So, for example, like Beyond Burger wouldn't be included in this?
Yeah, so no, Beyond Burger would not be included in this. It's, again, goes back to that created in a petri dish. It's not just you've got a bunch of ingredients and you've sort of successfully sort of combined them. What I thought about then is, again, it's only then a matter of time before artificial meat prices fall, and because there are some benefits around, again, sort of animal rights, there's an environmental benefit.
Far fewer carbon emissions, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only going to be a matter of time before some government body decides to really push artificial meat. And this could be maybe from a lobbying effort, or it could just be because they want to sort of cut down on maybe some exports, some imports rather. There's a few different reasons why. But one way that a government body could sort of push for this is that they can sort of certify or sort of campaign to use artificial meat in like a national dish. So then I thought about it and I read, we're talking about listicles. I read a long listicle about all the different artificial meats.
Oh, yeah.
And it's good, right? And then, funnily enough, I then sort of said, which one of these countries, which ones could really use artificial meat in their national dish? So I've got some pictures for you. Are you ready to hear some national dish ideas that have been updated with artificial meat?
Yeah, hit me with them.
Yeah. The first is like the hamburger or hot dog in the US. And I think this is probably where it's like most likely going to happen. And I think people are already talking about it happening.
That's interesting because the US, I didn't realize they have like a national dish as much, right?
Yeah, I think it's contested, right? Whether you call the hamburger a national dish.
Sorry, just quick clarification. So when you say national dish, are you talking about like the government actually gets involved with it? Or are you just talking about there is a cultural identity so strong that that country is associated with it?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit tricky what is a national dish. So I guess the way I'm thinking about this is I think it's a very common dish in the country will have some sort of government endorsement where the government endorsement will say, try this dish with an artificial meat, right? Like it will have, the hard part is not the fact that the actual product will have artificial meat. The hard part of like the reason why this will, the reason why this prediction is unlikely, I think, is because you need a government to endorse the dish and sort of lobby for it. So yeah, let's go back. From the UK, we have roast artificial beef and Yorkshire pudding. This is a classic. I think people would maybe view it as like anti-nationalistic to try and replace
Yeah, Britain at the
beef with
moment
artificial
is
beef.
pretty worried about being, is pretty nationalistic at the moment, right? That may be a hard sell.
Yeah, I think that's a hard sell, right? Next one, the German currywurst with artificial
That's
meat.
a good one.
How do you feel
Man,
about that?
I'm already on board with that, actually. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Yeah, well, one other thing I read which I thought was pretty funny was it was on some alternative meat website. It said, we currently only eat about 10 species of animals, right? There are over 500 species of animals. What's the chance that we've picked the 10 tastiest ones?
Apparently, like, turtle is really good.
I don't even want to know who tells you that. How would they know?
No, and the way I know, and this is a massive digression, but on ships going back to the UK after like a voyage, they'd put turtles, like these massive giant turtles, they'd put them on the ship to bring them back to the UK to have in like zoos and to study them. But on each trip back, they would eat it along the way because they taste so good. And like they wanted some food, they ate it, and then they were just like, oh my god, these things are amazingly tasty. So it took them ages. I think it was the Galapagos turtle. It took them ages to actually bring one back to the UK because they kept eating them every time they tried bringing them back.
That's so funny that, wait, so they weren't heading back with the sole reason of bringing a turtle back, were they?
It was one of the many things they do on those voyages. Anyway, I'll keep going on some more predictions. Okay, Daniel. Next national dish idea. Scottish haggis.
I don't know what haggis is, and I don't think I want to know. I've heard enough already.
It's pretty... I'm going to have to look it up. It's just so I know exactly what it is. Yeah. It's a pudding containing... Is it sheep's stomach? Oh, it's something
God.
like that. It contains sheep's stomach.
Oh, God.
That's like the main thing. Just... Yeah, I think actually... Like, that is so unlikely to happen because it is such a... Just... it's a national dish that stands out on its own. Right? So you can't even mess with it. It's so unique. So,
that's kind
Next
of a
one.
funny point, though. I wonder with all these alternative meats, you know how it's like you can eat bull's testicles and there's like all of these like quite novelty meats, and I have the feeling they originated because it's like you don't want to waste any part of the animal, right? With all these artificial meats, I wonder if that's almost going to go away, right? Like, there's no need to eat sheep's brain because there's not a massive surplus of sheep's brain just lying around, right? Like, there'll probably only be just the good stuff, right? That's actually pretty pleasant to think about.
Yeah. It will all be just like Wagyu beef. Every national dish will just have Wagyu, like artificial Wagyu beef. That would just be the thing.
Man, exciting future.
Nothing else.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Here's one I think that's likely. Swedish meatballs, right? That's a national dish. And I think, again, with the meatballs, because it's like a little bit processed, like the German currywurst, I think it could, it's very easy just to integrate like artificial meat into it instead of some of the others. Plus, again, Sweden, like Germany, a lot of vegetarians and vegans, very concerned about the environment and things like that. So I think that artificial meat could really take off there, and it would then get into the national dish, and maybe there would be some sort of lobbying and endorsement by the government there. So I think that one would be pretty interesting.
I feel like Swedes are also very proud of their culture, right? Like all of Scandinavia is very proud of their culture and would be like quite keen to have a national dish which they're quite loud and proud about, but then also update it and be quite loud and proud about that. Like a lot more so than most of these other countries, I'd say.
Yeah. Proud and progressive, right? I guess is maybe the two things.
Yeah.
Okay, Hong Kong, artificial dim sims, or dim sums, I guess it's... So again, a little bit similar to the other ones. It's because it is sort of like mixed meat, right? You're mixing it with herbs and spices and things like that, and then packaging it up into like a dim sum. There's maybe some possibility there. Next one, and here's where I'm going extreme. Iceland has fermented shark, which has been fermented for 6 months. Now, my pitch here is, if it's been fermented for 6 months, like, you could put anything down there and just let it ferment for 6 months. How would you even know it's fermented shark?
Jesus. Just anything down there, yeah.
Just a piece of leather, just ferment it for 6 months, pull it up. Yeah, it's the same. That's my pitch. Yeah.
God.
So that's another candidate, and again, it goes back into that. Yeah, maybe because they're Scandinavian, they want to be progressive and things like that. Maybe they'd endorse that. I have no idea how they would do it. So I think that one, although it's a Scandinavian country, maybe a lot of vegetarians and vegans, I think the probability here is that it's low that it becomes fermented shark. Is the number one application of artificial meat.
Yeah, I thought shark was one of the cheapest meat, actually. Because apparently...
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think they've renamed it. So if you go to a fish and chips shop and they don't specify what type of fish it is, it means it's shark. And I think it's because they accidentally catch a lot when they do like these... To clarify, I'm no fishing expert. I think it was like some random untrustworthy person told me this. So, but yeah, I think it's when they do large fishing expeditions. I think often they'll like catch a bunch of sharks in the net. Like, it's not necessarily good meat, but it's like good enough.
Wow, Daniel, I am very skeptical as to this claim. I'm very skeptical.
No, I wholeheartedly believe my local fish and chip shop.
I'm pretty sure, like, now we're really digressing, but I'm pretty sure if you go to a fish and chip shop and they don't specify the type of fish, you get, like, the stock fish. Like, you get the sort of, the catch, like, the plentiful catch of the day. So it's always something like...
Don't they always claim...
very...
Like, they upsell you where they can, right? Like, I feel like if it was good, they would claim it was good.
This isn't fish, goddammit, this is shark. Is that what you're saying? This is outraged.
Yeah, maybe it is. No, fuck. Could I look this up? Maybe I will.
I think we're getting way off topic. But I think, listen, ladies and gentlemen that are listening, can we please figure this out right into us? If they don't specify the fish at the fish and chip shop, is it shark? That is really the question here.
Yes.
That is one hell of a assertion to make.
No, mate, you know what? It's called flake. That's what they've rebranded. Yeah, no, I've looked it up. I'm shameless about it. That's fine. It's been rebranded to flake, and yeah, according to goodfood.com.au and Macquarie University, apparently the primary ingredient in fish and chips is shark.
Okay, I'm going to get this back on track now. What do you think? Do you think a government will actually announce/endorse a national dish that has been updated with artificial meat?
So I am actually going to put this a fair bit higher than 5%. I think I would put this north of 10%. Yeah, also... I think one of the countries which would probably be most likely to do this would... maybe not. Well, I know Thailand has got, like, a pretty strong food identity. So I wonder if, like, I know a lot of Southeast Asian countries do. So I wonder if there would be something there. Like, I guess I'm rambling here, but they don't really care that much about... Well, they don't care as much as countries like Germany and a lot of European countries about it being alternative meats, though. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But I think one thing that we haven't really considered so far in this pitch, which I think will be a big factor, is about lobbying. I think beef industry is a pretty big industry, and I think they would be pretty anti any government announcing or endorsing a national dish, right, that has been updated with artificial meat, because that's like how they make a lot of money, presumably, when it comes to that national day where they all make the national dish. If they lose some percentage of that, that's like a lot of revenue, right, for that industry. So even though like hamburgers and hot dogs in the US are like sort of target number one for a lot of these artificial meat industries, the notion that a government body will actually endorse artificial meat being used in this way, like in a big way, I think it's still sort of unlikely.
Well,
I think.
I guess then it probably makes...
saying it's higher.
Well, it probably just changes the country that it's super likely for, right? Because it's like, I know Australia has got like a pretty large amount of beef exports, right? But a country like Germany, I thought you mentioned at one point, they've got the most vegans per capita in the world. Like, I admittedly don't know too much about the agricultural output, but I imagine it's probably not that high. Like, wouldn't they be a good example country where it's like, they're progressive enough, they actually have a pretty strong cultural identity, and And yeah, I think they're also well positioned in the sense that if they make this meat, it'll be quite cheap to ship out elsewhere. Like I wonder if they would be a good example.
Yeah, but then again, you also have to match it up with what the national dishes are, right? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. So there you have it. Artificial meat in a national dish, and it will be endorsed. Let's hear your next one.
So my next one, I'm quite excited about this one. By 2025, we will have a new English word that describes an emotion.
Wow. Okay,
Is that your response to all of these?
More.
Just wow. We're going to call you Owen Wilson if you keep this up.
The creativity. Yeah, it's a good one. I like it. A new English word. Oh my gosh. How
Yeah, good question.
I
think it was because I was thinking about Nassim Taleb's book Anti-Fragile, actually. But anyway, that makes me sound a bit too pretentious, so let's move on. So I guess what I actually mean by this is, by a new English word, I just mean every year there's like a significant number of new words are added to the English dictionary. So some estimates put this at around 500 to 1,000 every year, and then it obviously changes per dictionary. So I got that number from the Webster's Dictionary, and then just related to an emotion. So I guess examples of emotions for those listening is acceptance, affection, euphoria, horror, outrage, pride.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for those examples.
Yeah, just in case people listening didn't know what emotions were.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so lots of new words then are coming out into the Webster's Dictionary, every year, and then are there some examples of some of those words that are like emotions?
So it's quite funny because when I was searching this up, it's like you go into Google and you type in like new emotions. And it's like I could not find a good search term for the life of me that could actually give me any half decent result that wasn't a bloody listicle, or just like asking me how I'm feeling. One of the worst parts about this is I now keep getting ads saying like, "Are you okay? Feel free to reach out to someone." So I don't know if this was worth it, but yeah, one of the ones which I did manage to come up with was FOMO is actually pretty recent. So this is the fear of missing out, which I hope all of you have heard of. So the term was first coined back in 2004, which like obviously was quite a long time ago. So these don't come out terribly often. So I guess that's a good beginning where it's like, it's a low % chance, but it's definitely possible. And then...
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. I do like the fact that you just then said FOMO is the fear of missing out, and I hope you've heard of it, right? Because all of a sudden you're instilling FOMO in people.
Wow, I'm an experiential teacher. That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, yeah, coined in 2004. That's really early. I thought it was much later.
Yeah, I thought it was similar to YOLO, where it was quite late. But yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this is FOMO was quite obviously a thing like a very long time ago, right? Like it's not like it popped up 16 years ago. But yeah, we just didn't have a word for it. And I think one of the funny things about this is this actually has occurred continuously in history, with the most well-cited example is most ancient civilizations didn't actually have the word for blue. So the most...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the most well-known example of this is in the Odyssey, Homer famously describes the wine dark sea instead of calling it blue or green. Yeah, it just seems very, very strange to us now.
Yeah, okay. So there are probably some emotions that we just haven't been able to put a word to.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was trying to think about what it could actually be, right? And I think one thing that's really happened in the past, like last 20 years or so, is anxiety just seems to be a much more well-known thing, but it just seems like almost everyone's like got it to some extent, right? It just seems to come up a lot. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the last emotive word I could find, it also had something to do with anxiety. So my prediction, not part
Yeah.
of the 5% prediction, but my prediction is that the next word we come out with to do with an emotion will have something to do with anxiety, and it will be a more specific type of anxiety, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Man, I'm starting to think of examples here. Do you know the word Schadenfreude? Which is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
German one? Like, where you take pleasure in other people's misfortune? Because that one was very big. I think that was like the word of the year for some dictionary or something like that recently. Yeah, and emotions are so complex. I'm sure there are things that we could describe that are new in that space, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so do you think it would also be something about anxiety, or like, what do you think it would be about?
I'm sure there are lots of words to describe different mental states that we don't know about. Like, here's one. What is like the opposite? Like, if you think about it in terms of antonyms, I think is maybe a good exercise here.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the opposite of like paranoia? Right? So, paranoia is like you have a belief that everything's like connected. Now, what's the opposite of that? What's the like mental state where you think, oh, everything just seems so disconnected and like there isn't like a common thread? There's just lots
I
of
hope
randomness.
it sort of ties into it, right? Because I see paranoia as kind of like a uncertainty about, or like a pessimistic uncertainty, and I guess hope is kind of an optimistic uncertainty. So, or would you be saying then an optimistic certainty?
Yeah, I guess this is a little bit tricky because I think a lot of these things have like medical definitions, like medical
Yeah.
conditions. So, like, if we're going down the what's the antonym of one thing and what's the antonym of another, that could be a little bit problematic.
Well, one thing I like about this prediction is we're portraying that men can talk about their emotions and their feelings, right?
Yes.
You don't get that
Yes,
much.
of course.
So, you get it here. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Scenario 95, where men aren't afraid to talk about not their feelings, but the concept of feelings.
Yeah. Well, just with the previous episodes, I was talking about sports, cars, all that sort of stuff, and I've decided
Yeah.
to soften up today and talk about reality TV and emotions.
Yeah, exactly. The car man Dan has opened up. Oh my gosh. I think this one's cool. I think it might be about right that there's around the probability, because it doesn't seem to happen all the time, but it certainly has happened in the past. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think about 5%
Sweet.
sounds about right.
Now that we've done that one, I'm keen to hear your last one.
And here it comes, Daniel. I'm laying this one on you. By 2025, pop music will overtake hip hop music as the most popular genre. Okay.
I'm just
Is
gonna
it?
just say straight out the gate, I know quite literally nothing about hip hop. Pop, I'm well versed. Hip hop, literally nothing.
You know stuff about
Name
pop
a
and
few
hip
hip
hop.
hop songs, like frame it for me.
Anything by Drake is considered
Oh.
hip hop, right?
Oh.
Kanye is hip hop. So I guess, yeah, for the uninitiated, let's talk about the difference. So and this is me just looking this straight up online because I'm no expert, but hip hop refers to a style of music. It's rap music with electronic backing, and then pop music is like modern music, so contemporary music with like a strong melody and beat. So, very quickly, I thought I would just sort of give you guys a history lesson in how the music genres have evolved over time. Essentially, in the 1950s, there was a lot of sort of clean pop music, and then we got into rock music from the 60s through to the 80s. And then in the 80s, rock was dominant, but pop music was sort of had a resurgence. It became quite popular again. And then in the 90s is when rock music died, and R&B and country and pop had another bounce, and then turn of the millennium, sort of rap hip hop took off, right? And it just is now in the number one position. So if we look at currently sort of volume, like how much music is being consumed and what genre does it classify into, Nielsen Music has a really great breakdown of this, where hip hop music makes up about 26% of all the music that we listen to. Pop music is about 13%, and rock music has around 20% of the share. of all the music that we listen to. That was in the year 2019, I should say. Right, so hip-hop is really dominant, and pop has about half of what hip-hop has, right? So this is really unlikely. I think that pop will just sort of have this massive resurgence and hip-hop will die. But here's what I'm thinking, Daniel. Pop will overtake hip-hop because hip-hop music will become pop.
Well, yeah, doesn't pop stand for popular?
Exactly. Because so much music has sort of become hip-hop, that surely what will happen is some things that are like hip-hop light will start to be sort of reclassified as pop. And I'll give you an example. Post Malone, he won Grammys in the pop category, not in the hip-hop category. And I think a lot of people would have considered Post Malone to sort of be in the hip-hop category, if that makes sense. So I think already we're sort of seeing that there could be like a transition where what needs to be considered hip-hop, a much more specific sort of slice of what is currently hip-hop. And if a shift like that happens, then I think we could see pop overtake. Right. So, yeah, how do you feel about this?
My initial thoughts are, I could definitely see it happening. I'm going to be honest, I thought pop was the most popular, but clearly that's wrong. Yeah. One thing...
Why? Because of the name? Well, you'd be so wrong.
I thought it was a dead giveaway. But anyway, yeah, I do also wonder, it seems like everyone's obsessed with TikTok now, and this is kind of the first social media website which has got music like strongly tied in. I wonder if that's also kind of kicking pop off again, because that's all about doing like dances to different songs. And I swear I saw something where a bunch of songs became like very popular purely because there were like very popular dances on TikTok for those songs. Like I wonder if that will also help.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. I think that TikTok could really make maybe pop music have a resurgence because maybe it's more catchy. And I think maybe for like TikTok and stuff, you need like really catchy stuff for it to go a bit viral. But yeah, so that's my real short one. And I think 5% sounds about unlikely because it is quite a mammoth effort for pop to sort of overtake hip-hop. Of course, we haven't really just spoken about the fact that maybe just there'll just be some really great pop artists that come up.
Yeah.
Right? I think we're sort of going for the cheat way, which is that there'll be a reclassification. Of course, the other way is that just pop music just sort of dominates again because it is just better artists in that.
Yeah, Dua Lipa released a couple of albums this year, like an album and then a what do you call it? Remix album. And my God, it is just so bloody good. Right? Like, I wonder if she will lead the charge. Yeah, okay. I guess my thoughts then, after all of that, is like, I have got a very low confidence on this, but 5% seems like about right.
5% might even be generous, but yeah, let's go. Let's see. Crazier things have happened in music. That was a shorter prediction, so that ends our 4. Daniel, what do you think? Any feedback? What's your general vibe?
I think that was pretty good. I think I like the predictions this week. There's I really like the hip hop one because like, I'm just going to be honest, I just don't know much about music, like especially like in terms of like the larger trends and like the genres and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think alternative meats just as a topic is so interesting because I'm pretty certain that in like 20 years time that'll basically be all we eat, right? So it's interesting, like thinking about the future. You know, we get our taste of the future today with your delightful fridge of the future.
Yeah, and also your predictions as well. Man, I'm going to start watching more reality TV, and I'm going to start I'm going to start writing in and complaining about controversies now that aren't controversies. I'm going to try and make The Bachelor get cancelled.
Yeah. Maybe it's not a 5% prediction. Maybe it's low. But with this show, with all of us writing in aggressively, it'll be over 5%. It'll be great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one final note on that. If you are getting into reality TV, I couldn't recommend any show more than Flavor of Love, which is effectively just The Bachelor, except it is set in 2006. And The Bachelor is an early noughties rapper called Flavor Flav, where his catchphrase is Flavor Flav. And his gimmick is mate, it's compelling stuff. And he wears like clocks around his neck, like that's like as a necklace. That's kind of his thing. Yeah, I've been watching a bit of it, man. It is something. It's like in The Bachelorette, if you get drunk at a cocktail party, like they cover it up as much as they can. On the first episode of this, someone is literally vomiting into a bin because they're just that inebriated. And all the other contestants are like dancing with her and trying to like get her to rally so that she can stand upright long enough to receive a clock so she can stay another week.
Oh my gosh.
That's not quality TV. Yeah. I don't know what is.
Yeah, that does sound like something I'll have to check out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, great. In other news about our predictions, I do like the fact that you have jumped away from cars for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, what can I say, man? Just other things struck. I was just thinking too much about emotions this week. But yeah. Rest assured, cars will be coming back.
Yeah, and I like that I'm relatively consistent as well. I've got another episode where I'm talking about pop culture and food, which is my area of expertise.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, awesome. Let's keep thinking about them, and we'll come back next week even stronger with better predictions, closer to 5%. It'll be great.